that there's the people that don't. I wouldn't say don't like Lincoln Riley, but I think the people that maybe question him as a head coach, I think are the people that think he's a little too soft, and I think some of the things that he says during his press conference is very, like we talked about, it's very much coach speak a lot of times. But I think he's mentioned on several occasions like we're closer than you guys, we're really close, we're closer than you guys think, we're closer than the media and the national experts think. Well, I mean, you're 8 games in, you can only say that so many times. I mean, that you can say that early on in the season. When you're 8 games in, you kind of are who you are at this point. Certainly, you could if you get some of your injured players back, you can come back and be better. But you but you're in a position where this is what kind of team that you are. So you got to figure out how to win. And I guess the only silver lining in this is they've played down to the competition so many times, and yet they still figured out ways to win. So I mean that's one positive. But like I said, you look at the schedule and it's not been it's not strong. The teams that Oklahoma has played this year, besides maybe Texas, and they're reeling a little bit. Aren't at the talent level, anywhere near the talent level that Oklahoma has. So now you're starting to get into a situation where you've got some teams that are closer from a talent perspective. On top of the fact that you have to go on the road for 2 of these 3 games, so it'll be interesting. It's kind of fun to think about, Mark, the fact that Oklahoma has dominated the month of November over the last 4 or 5 years. It's been, I'd have to go look at the stats, but it's been a long time since they've lost a game in November. And but this is one of the tougher Novembers that they've had. So it'll be interesting to see how it happens with Iowa State really playing a lot better now than they were at the beginning of the season, and then obviously Baylor is as well.
To Jason's point, if you take the other elite programs in the country and just go through, I've got a site that I've got a tab to that I can go to quickly, and it's got all the historical scores, meaning you can go through each team in the FBS and it goes year by year. I guarantee that Nick Saban has not had a performance like that at Alabama against that caliber of a team. Nothing close to it.
Right.
I don't know when the last time Ohio State had a performance like that against, again, a bottom dweller in the conference. They haven't in forever.
I mean,
and
home is how they. I mean, and they finished the game strong. But the closest I can think of in recent memory, obviously you know much better than I do, but the Tulsa game this year, and not the Tulsa bottom dweller, but they did struggle a little bit in that game.
Yeah.
No, your point's well taken.
Yeah. So and certainly this year, my goodness, looking at Georgia, they're even taking the hammer to pretty good teams.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's like I said, it's concerning if you're an Oklahoma fan, just year in and year out, this happening. And maybe they're not. And I think Weston has mentioned this on the chat, and then I've heard some talk about maybe they're not as good as we thought they were coming in from a talent perspective. I think they're much more talented than I think they're showing on the field. Let's just say that. So, but like I said, I mean, part of it's a culture. There's just a lot of different, I think, factors that are pointing to where they're struggling. That the injuries are definitely a factor. When you lose 3 out of your 4 starters in the secondary, that's going to impact you from a team that's not necessarily great in the back end to begin with, right? So when you take that into effect, and then when you take into effect maybe the lack of effort and maybe to a certain degree losing a little bit of the locker room on the defensive side of the ball, then that all those things equate to a bad defense right now. But the positive thing is you are undefeated and you have the opportunity to turn it around if it's not too late at this point in the year.
Let's say Oklahoma does what we would expect them to do. What would be the reasonable expectation against Texas Tech? So that's not winning 63-7, but that's also not struggling like they did this past weekend. That's winning by 3 touchdowns. They win 45-24. Nobody thinks Texas Tech is very good. They're a top 60 team in the country, something like that.
Yeah.
the committee, so there's not an outlier to say, okay, Oklahoma's kicked it into gear or they're continuing to struggle mightily. I will be curious to see how the committee shows their hand on whether they're strongly siding with just winning and it's Oklahoma and they're talented and we believe in the brand, we believe in the roster, and they are getting the wins, or we're going to penalize them. They can't penalize them too severely. It's not like they're going to be behind a bunch of 2-loss teams by any stretch, but a few spots for continuing to struggle.
Yeah, I think so. Let's say, if, to your point, Mark, for the sake of argument, Oklahoma, maybe they don't struggle, but they, 17 to 21 point win against Texas Tech, and then you have, uh, I could see a scenario which I'm sure would just enrage Oklahoma fans, but um, I wouldn't be surprised to see a scenario just based on the teams that Oklahoma has struggled against. If they had played in Oklahoma State, or maybe they played in Oregon in the non-conference, or anything like that, you could see a different scenario. But they're struggling with these teams that frankly aren't very good, right? And I think one of the things that's been brought to the table, that each and every week the quarterback that Oklahoma has faced is having either a career or a season best. Like, Jason Bean last week for Kansas looked great. Max Duggan the week before had his best game of his career. Um, so that they're struggling against some of these teams that aren't very good.